With Hashem's help, we're picking up in the book of Melachim, the book of Kings, and we are in the second chapter in verse number 26. That's what we'll be starting tonight. When we last left off, David HaMelech, before he died, he instructed his son Shlomo to settle all of the accounts. You should find a way to punish Yoav. Use your wisdom to punish Yoav, the general, who on the one hand was a supporter of David, but on the other hand, he betrayed him twice by killing Avner and by killing his own son Avshalom. So David said, I'm not going to kill him, but I want you to use your wisdom to find a way to kill him. And Eviatar HaKohen, who was formerly the Kohen Gadol, he also betrayed David when he went to support Adoniyahu instead of Solomon. So David said, depose him. He shouldn't be the Kohen. And Shimi ben Ger, I remember that was the third one, the one who David. David's lifetime, it was his first day. It was like the inaugural day. He didn't want to punish Shimi. And I want you to take care of Shimi ben Gera, the one who cursed me. You can't get away with that. So I want you to find a way to put him to death as well. And the end of chapter 2 is going to be now the unfolding of all of these instructions, how King Solomon carried them out. So chapter 2, verse number 26. Ule Aviatar HaKohen Amar Melech, to Aviatar, who was previously the Kohen Gadol, the king Shlomo said, Anatot lech, go to Anatot. Al Sadecha, go home. Ki ish mavetata, because you are a man deserving of death. I'm not going to kill you today. I'm going to put off your death because you did carry the Ark of Hashem. You're a holy man. You served as the Kohen Gadol. And you also afflicted yourself together with my father. I mean, although at the end, Eviatar betrayed David, he knew that Solomon was supposed to be the king. He knew Shlomo was supposed to be the king. And he instead followed Adoniyahu. So that was a betrayal. However, the early days were a sacrifice that Eviatar supported David for everything. When David was exiled without Beklian, Eviatar after him, and he served as a man on the inside, and that was very praiseworthy. And therefore, Shlomo is telling him, on the one hand, I have to punish you, and you're a rebeller. You rebelled against the king. On the other hand, I'm not going to put you to death today because of your support to my father. So go home. What I'm going to do is you're fired. You're no longer the Kohen Gadol. You have been removed. And this, in addition to Eviatar's personal punishment, is actually closing the loop on a punishment which was promised many, many years prior. And that is that Eviatar was a descendant of Eli the Kohen, who was all the way at the beginning of the book of Shmuel. His two sons, Chofni and Pinchas, behaved inappropriately. And the punishment was that the kahuna, the lead Kohen role of Kohen Gadol, should transfer from Eli and his descendants to the other family of the Kohanim, which would be Pinchas and his descendants, prior. So that's what's happening here as well. In addition to Eviatar's individual punishment, it's also the transfer of the kahuna from one family to another. It's now going to go to Tzadok, who comes from a different branch of the Kohanim. Okay. And that's what the verse emphasizes in number 27. Vaygeresh Shlomo et Eviatar miyot Kohen Lashem. And Shlomo kicked out Eviatar from being the Kohen, lemale et devar Hashem, to fulfill the word of Hashem, who spoke regarding the house of Eli in Shiloh. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. Eviatar is deposed, he's out. Tzadok HaKohen is in. Now, word gets back to Yoav. Yoav has lots to worry about. He killed Avner, he killed Avshalom, and he also joined the rebellion of Adoniyahu to try to become the king instead of Shlomo. So Yoav hears Vashmoa ba'ad Yoav. The news came to Yoav, and he was concerned. The verse is going to give us now 2 reasons why he was concerned. Ki Yoav nata acharei Adoniyah. Number 1, he followed after Adoniah, and number two, Acharei Avshalom lo nata, and he did not follow after Avshalom. Vayanos Yoav el Hashem vayachazek v'yakon. And therefore, Yoav, to save his life, ran to the altar of Hashem and held on to its corners. Now, this is a little bit difficult to understand. It's giving us two reasons that Yoav ran to save his life. The first was he supported Adoniah. That I hear. That is the wrong team. But the second reason that's given here, before it explains that he ran, that he fled, Acharei Avshalom lo nata, is that he did not follow after Avshalom. So I would think that's actually that's a good thing that he did, right? He didn't follow after Avshalom, the son of David, rebelled. He stuck with David. So why is the pasuk listing that as one of the reasons that Yoav ran away to save his life? There's a few ways about it. The Malbim writes that if Yoav would have followed Avshalom, you could have said that he thought that it's always the oldest son who succeeds the father. So that's why I followed Adoniah. I think it's the oldest son. Adoniah was the next in line in terms of age. But the pasuk is saying, no. He proved that this was not his reasoning. He followed after Adoniah, but he did not follow after Avshalom. If he really thought that the oldest is always next in line, then he should have followed Avshalom as well. From the fact that he didn't follow Avshalom, he doesn't have this innocent excuse, I didn't know, I thought he was the oldest. That is not going to pass because your own actions have proven that your real intention was to avoid Shlomo being in charge so that you wouldn't get punished. That's one reason. That's one explanation, and the other explanation was that in fact the verse is hinting at the fact that he would have rebelled against Avshalom if David was not so strong. During Avshalom's rebellion, David HaMelech still had his youth and his strength, and that's why he didn't join the rebellion. But we see from the fact that he joined Adoniah's rebellion that he really could have joined Avshalom's. As far as he was concerned, he was just afraid. By the time Adoniah rebelled, David was already very old, and Yoav felt more comfortable. Either way, it's a casting Yoav's actions into a negative light, and therefore Yoav's decision is he's going to run to the altar and hold on to its corners, which we actually saw not long ago with Adoniah himself. He held on to the corners, the horns of the altar, the protrusions that come up from the altar. There is a dispute amongst the Rishonim, again, like we saw by Adoniah. Was this happening in Yerushalayim? There was just an altar there, or did he go to the place where the Mishkan was, which would be at this point, is it Givon, I believe? He would have run all the way to there. But either way, he's holding onto the altar. So I want to share with you a Gemara in Makos. I hope that it appears. Can you see it? Yeah, I'll try to make it a little bigger. Let's see if I can. Okay. It says here, Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Shtei ta'uyot ta'a Yoav be'ota hashah. When Yoav ran and grabbed the altar, he made two mistakes at that very moment. It says in the verse referring to our section, and Yoav fled to the tent of Hashem and grasped the horns of the altar. He made two mistakes at that very moment. What were there? Number one is, ta'a sheino kolet el agago, vehu tafas bekarnotav. If a person wants to claim safety by the altar, it's not the horns that provide refuge, it's the roof, the top of the altar. And he was holding on to the wrong spot. So that was one mistake. You're holding on to the wrong spot. It's not enough to be holding on to the horns. You have to actually place your hand on the top of the altar where the sacrifices go. The second mistake that he made was, sheino kolet el mizbeach beit olamim, v'hu tafas mizbeach shel Shiloh. Oh, Shiloh. That's the Girsa in our Gemara. different texts over here, actually. The second mistake he made was that it's not any altar that provides refuge. It's specifically the altar in the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, which had not been built yet. The altar of the Mishkan is not one to offer refuge. Last time is that there is a concept of seeking refuge by the altar, that in some circumstances, in the Beis HaMikdash, when your hand is on the roof of the altar, on the top of the altar, not the roof, the top, yeah? In that circumstance, there are cases where a person will be protected and his life will not be taken. One case where this for sure works is if you have the inadvertent killer, somebody who kills b'shogeg. His obligation is to run to the city of refuge, right? And as long as he's outside of the city of refuge, the next of kin has the right to kill him. Right? Reuven, for example, accidentally killed. He accidentally killed Shimon. Reuven goes to the city of refuge. If he steps out of the city of refuge, Shimon's son can kill Reuven. However, if Reuven places his hand on the altar of the temple, then he is afforded refuge, even though he's not in a city of refuge. The altar itself serves as a refuge. That's one case where everyone agrees the altar, well, not even everyone, but as we'll see in a moment, where many will agree that the altar offers refuge. In this case, Yoav was on the wrong altar and even in the wrong spot of the altar. Abaye adds another limitation, and this is subject to debate. The concept of the altar offering refuge is only for Kohanim in the middle of their service. If a priest in the middle of his service places his hand on the altar, the next of kin cannot kill him. But otherwise, it's not relevant. And in this case, Yoav is not even a Kohen. It's nothing to do with him. Okay. Mr. Fox, did you have a comment? Yeah.
Yes. Is the ark anywhere near here?
I lost track of the ball here. The ark, I believe, is in Yerushalayim. The ark was brought to Yerushalayim by David. That was that huge procession when he first came back into power. So the question is where this altar was. There's a debate on the text of this Gemara.
Okay.
If this was in Givon, it's in a different city. But it could be that the altar was the one in Yerushalayim that they had just built for their use. So it might be that the ark was nearby. Why do you ask?
But touching the ark itself, Aaron's two sons died because of.
That's correct. The ark itself should not be touched, and it's like you said, it's high voltage.
Right.
You don't want to touch it. It's extremely holy, and only if it's your job to carry it on your shoulder. Even in that case, you don't touch the ark; you just touch the staves, the sticks.
Right.
So
what he was holding was not part of the ark. Correct.
Okay. This was a separate altar where they would bring sacrifices. It was made out of earth. Yeah. Okay. So these are the mistakes of Yoav, and as we're going to see, he's going to be nevertheless executed. Let's see what happens here. A little bit more to say. We'll squeeze it in a moment. Okay. So, verse number 9. Vayugad Melech Shlomo kinas Yoav el Ohel Hashem. And it was told to Shlomo, the news comes to King Shlomo, that Yoav ran away. V'hine eitzel hamizbeach. And there he is. He's standing by the altar, Shlomo. What should we do? So Shlomo sends his new army general, or what's going to be the new army general, Benayahu ben Yehoyada, telling him, Lech pegabo, go kill him. Like we just explained, Yoav made a mistake. This is not offering any protection. Go and kill him. Vayavo Benayahu el Hashem. Benayahu comes and he approaches Yoav and he tells him, so said the king, say, get out. Which is interesting. The king did not say to get out. The king said to kill him. I guess what was happening was he didn't want to kill him there in the spot, even though it doesn't offer official refuge. it's not pleasant to kill somebody by the altar where we bring sacrifices to Hashem. So he said, get out, I want to put you to death. Or I'll take him to Sanhedrin. I'm going to take you to the court where we'll convict you as committing treason, and you're going to be put to death. So Yoav said, no, I don't want you to take me to court. Kipo amu, I want you to kill me here. Vayashiv Beniyahu et HaMelech Devar Lemor, Kodi Ber Yoav v'cho Anani. So Beniyahu says, oh gosh, we got a problem here. He doesn't want to come to the court, so I can put him to death properly. So he goes back to King Solomon to say, Yoav doesn't want to come to the court. So the king says, do as he said, kill him in his place, kill him right there on the altar, and bury him. And by killing Yoav, we will have removed the guilt of the blood of Shalom and Avner that he killed. So what's happening here? Yoav was a huge Talmid Chacham. He was one of the leaders in terms of his scholarship. He was one of the leaders of the Jewish people. How could he make such a blunder thinking that the Mizbeach will offer him protection? The altar does not offer protection. So the Gemara says one of two reasons. Why was he insisting on coming to the altar rather than just going to Sanhedrin to be convicted? He's anyways going to be killed. So one reason is if the Sanhedrin kills you, anybody who's put to death by the court is buried in a special section of the cemetery. He's not buried amongst his family in the familial plot. They bury those who were put to death, who were executed by the courts, in a separate section for people who are executed. And he didn't want to be buried there. So he said, I'd rather be killed outside of the court system so that I can be buried with my fathers. The second reason given is he just wanted to buy some time. He wanted to stay alive for a few more hours. So he was making it more difficult to get. If I get taken to Sanhedrin, it's going to be an open shut case. I'll be killed right away. I'd rather insist, especially if he was in Givon, I'd rather insist, no, I'm staying here. So he would have to go all the way back to Jerusalem, come all the way back, and eventually kill him. He wanted to buy himself some more time, just to, precious life. Chayei Sha'ah, the Gemara calls it. Yeah. Okay. So Shlomo HaMelech says, no, don't worry about taking him out away from the altar. Just put him to death there on the spot. This is verse number 32. And Hashem shall repay the blood which he spilled upon his own head, that he killed two righteous people who were better than him, the Tovim Mimenu. And he killed them with a sword. Excuse me, I think I keep saying Avshalom and Avner. It's Avner and Amasa. Amasa was the supporter of Avshalom here. David lo yada, he killed them when my father was not aware. Et Avner ben Ner Sar Tzva Yisrael, vet Amasa. Yeah, there we go. And Amasa ben Yeter Sar Tzva Yehuda. And their blood should come upon the head of Yoav, Uverosh Zara Leolam, and David's children should have peace eternally. Okay, there's actually another conversation going on over here. You may recall that back in the book of Shmuel, Yoav was cursed by David, and part of the conversation that's behind the scenes over here, which Shlomo is trying to correct, is that Yoav is saying this is double jeopardy. I already got cursed by David for my behavior, for killing Avner. Now you're going to also put me to death? Yeah, I can't have both. If you want to kill me, then revoke the curse. But I can't have the curse and the death. So Shlomo is saying, okay, I'm going to nullify the curse. If you read in verse number 33, he seems to be alluding to the fact that the curse should not rebound on David's family. It should there should be peace for David's family. The blood should be on the head of Yoav and on his children, which implies that the curse should stay on Yoav and his children. And David and his children and his throne, yesh shalom ad olam Hashem. It should be with peace and everything should stay good. The Gemara in Sanhedrin said that Shlomo's hope, unfortunately, did not come to fruition. In fact, the curses rebounded and they instead applied to King David. Let's review what the curses are. The Gemara goes through each one. So here's the Gemara recapping what we just said. Benaiah brought the king word back, saying, "So said Yoav, and so he answered me." The Gemara explains. Yoav said to Shlomo's general, "Go and say to the king Shlomo, you cannot perform two actions to this man. If you kill me, then you should receive the curses which your father cursed me. And if you want me to receive the curses, then don't kill me." Oh, so excuse me, I said, "and fall upon him and bury him," which means I accept the terms. Let the curse go on David's family, and Yoav will be killed, because David did command Shlomo to kill Yoav. And now the Gemara is going to speak out how each one of the curses actually ended up applying to David tragically. All of the curses which David cursed Yoav were actually fulfilled in the children of David. David said about Yoav, Ali karet mi Yoav zav umetzora umachzik b'pelech v'nofel b'cherev v'chasar lachem. Let the house of Yoav never lack those which are afflicted with a seminal discharge. It's a certain disease. A leper, a metzora, weakly translated as leper, not really accurate. Or those that hold onto a staff, meaning they are lame, or fall by the sword, or lack bread. These 5 curses. So where do we see these 5 fulfilled? A zav afflicted with discharge is rechavam. It says Yerechavam made speed to get him up to his chariot. Merkava, the word chariot, is hamerkav, is referring to the discharge that he had. Okay, Mitzora, who was a leper in amongst David's descendants, that would be Uzziyahu, and it proves it from the text. Machzik b'pelech, one who holds onto the staff, is referring to Asa, the descendant of David. Asa in his old age was diseased in his feet. And the final 2, Nofel b'cherev, those who die by the sword, that would be Yoshiyahu, who was killed. The archers shot at Yoshiyahu, which means he's killed in war. That's what it means to die by the sword. Okay. And he wasn't just killed by the sword, it was very, very gruesome and dramatic. They made his entire body into a sieve. The amount of arrows that pierced Yoshiyahu in his death, very tragically. He was such a righteous king, and nevertheless he was killed in his death in a very brutal fashion. So not just for the sin that he committed in his generation, which we'll, God willing, get to, but it's also fulfillment of the curse that David gave to Yoav, that now is rebounding on his descendants. And chasar lechem, lacking bread, is Yechonia. Okay. This is what people say, or Yehuda concludes the statement, better to be the one who is cursed and not the one who curses. Yeah, because here we see that David is the one who said the curse, and nevertheless it was rebounded back on him. So better to get yourself out of the cursing business. It's not good. Yeah.
When the curse is executed, does it stop?
Yeah. Sounds like once it happens, it's diffused.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and it sounds like it was hanging for generations, meaning it didn't happen not to Solomon and not to Chizkiah, but it moved eventually. Each generation they got some of the curse, and I assume we don't get to see all of God's perspective, but you have to also account for the individual and his choices. Hashem would like 2 threads to overlap and make it relevant. So Rechavam, on the one hand, was bearing the curse of his father, but also for his own personal reasons deserved to be punished in that way. And so on with all the other 5 curses, the other 4 curses. Each individual was worthy of being punished in that specific way, and it was also simultaneously a fulfillment of the curse. That's how Hashem operates, very efficient and economical. Yeah, 2 birds with one stone. Okay. So that was also part of the conversation over here, that Yoav was trying to get himself out of the curses, and he succeeded. And I believe that's what Shlomo is saying, that when he said, I'm going to execute Yoav, and David and his house and his children should be at peace, it sounds like he was trying to get out of the curse. Like, I agree that the curse should come off of Yoav, and he's trying to make it just, I don't know, dissipate, and davening for the peace and the safety of his children. But alas, the curse is in fact fulfilled. The curse is. Okay. So that's verse number 34. Beniyahu went up, Vayifkabo, and he struck him, and he killed him. And he was killed by Vayikaver beveito bamidbar. He was killed in his house in the midbar, in the desert. So what does that mean? Yoav perhaps had a house in the desert. Maybe that's what it means. The Chazal say, actually, it's referring to the qualities, the good qualities of Yoav. Yoav's house was like a desert. Just like a desert has no owner, so too, people in Yoav's house felt like this is an ownerless place, because it was like doors open to everybody. Anybody could come at any time they wanted, come eat, drink, whatever. Yoav was such a generous person during his lifetime that his house was called the desert, which is just like a free-for-all. Come and take what you need. So in his death, being executed for his sins, we see the praise of Yoav, that his house was one of chesed, of kindness. Additionally, Chazal expound, the Veito Bamidbar, once Yoav was killed in his house, then the whole Klal Yisrael, the whole Jewish people, became like a desert, a barren desert, because now we lost his tremendous scholarship. Amazing? That he was put to death, and therefore everybody else is left as if we're in an open area without any resources that we need, because we've lost this great scholar. So it's a very complex thing, right? Yoav is a complex figure. We see from the fact that David himself didn't kill him. He did so much good, and he was such an amazing person. On the other hand, he had to die. So you have this dual situation, and both are being carried out. On the one hand, the verse laments his death. On the other hand, he was put to death. Okay. And so now Shlomo officially appoints Beniyahu to be the Sar Tzavat Achtav, the top of the army, and Sadok HaKohen becomes the Kohen Gadol under Abiatar. Okay, next on the list is Shimi ben Gera, Shimi, the one who cursed David, the Benjaminite. This is verse number 36. He calls over Shimi, and David's instruction were, make sure he doesn't die a natural death. I want you to make sure that he is executed eventually. So he says to him, Shlomo finds his clever way to cause his death. He says to Shimi, Bnei lecha bayit b'Yerushalayim, build a house in Jerusalem, and sit there, vayashavta sham. V'lo titzei misham ana v'ana. You should not go hither and thither. Don't go around. Don't go wandering. And it should be on the day that you leave and you pass Nachal Kidron, the stream of Kidron, you shall surely know that you will die on that day. And your blood is on your own head. It will be your fault. So David, in other words, the plan is, Shlomo says to Shimi, your new home is Jerusalem, and the moment you leave Jerusalem, you're a dead man. Okay, so you could stay alive as long as you want, but the moment you step out, you're finished. Now, if you read carefully, a little bit confusing, what exactly were the conditions? He said, build a house in Yerushalayim. Okay, it implies that as long as my home is in Yerushalayim, I can still go, like on a day trip. It says you shouldn't wander. Okay, maybe that means I shouldn't actually wander, but then not even on a day trip. But then it says, and once you pass Nachal Kidron, you're dead. Does that mean it's only forbidden for me to travel one path to exit in that specific direction? But maybe Shimi can travel south if he needed. So it's a little bit confusing, which might explain why Shimi actually violated these conditions. What's going to end up happening is Shimi goes to chase after some lost people, and he goes to get him, and he's put to death. What was his mistake? He misinterpreted the conditions here. He thought it was maybe one specific location I couldn't go towards. Now, why would the condition be so arbitrary? So Nachal Kidron, this stream which was set as the boundary, is actually the direction towards the plot of Benjamin. So he's telling him, I don't want you to travel. Shimei could have interpreted it as, the Malbim explains, I don't want you to travel towards your homeland because then you might try to rile up your brothers and cousins and make a rebellion. So maybe it's specifically to there that you shouldn't go back, not like Kidron. But if you want to go down or left or right, you can go to all the other places. That's how Shimei could have interpreted the condition. But in fact, it was not a fear of rebellion that had Shimei planted in Jerusalem. It was simply just to keep him in Jerusalem. He was like on house arrest or whatever. So here's what happens. In verse number 38, Shimei accepts the terms, and he dwelled in Jerusalem for many days. And in verse number 39, this is where it falls apart. It was at the end of 3 years. 2 slaves of Shimei run away to Achish ben Maacha melech Gat, to the Plishti city. Vayagidu l'Shimei lemor hine avadecha begat. And they say, hey, Shimei, we found your slaves there in Gat, in the Philistine city. So Shimei gets up, he gets on his donkey, and he goes to Gat to get his slaves, and he brings them back. Okay, so in his mind, he's just, getting his slaves. I guess it was urgent. I guess it was important. It's precious to him. And it was told to Shlomo that he went out. And so the king Shlomo says to him, you broke the rules. Halo ishbaticha b'Hashem. I made you swear in the name of Hashem. Va'id b'cha lemor, and I had testimony saying that on the day you get out, you will die. And you agreed. And why didn't you keep the rules? Why didn't you keep the shvua?
When you get the green square.
Number 44, Vayomer Melech El Shimi, Ata yadata et kol hara asher yada levavecha, asher asita leDavid aviv v'yeshiv Hashem et toratecha b'yoshecha. And so Shlomo is telling him, this is like a double language here. He's telling him, Hashem is repaying your evil on your head. Meaning he's saying that
go out.
Hashem you see that Hashem made this excuse, or he caused you to stumble in this swear. Why did Hashem cause you to stumble? Because you really deserve to die. This is Shlomo kind of including divine providence in his plans. He was saying, he made this interesting plan. Shimei, don't leave Jerusalem. Now, theoretically, Shimei could stay in Yerushalayim for 120 years, and he'll pass away a peaceful death on his deathbed. And thus he would not be fulfilling the word of David to kill him. But Shlomo was relying on the fact that since Shimei is evil, since he did wrong and he deserves death, Hashem will bring about his death through the condition that I laid. It's a very fascinating blend of Hashgacha, Hashem's providence on the one hand, and the actual plan of Shlomo. He didn't want to do it as directly.
I think, if I recall correctly, we said back when we were talking about David's last words to Shlomo, that part of the meaning of David saying to Shlomo, "You're smart, you'll figure out a way to do this," is Shlomo figured out the best way to make Shimei leave is to tell him he can't leave.
I hear. Don't push the red button.
Right. And he knew there was going to somehow Shimei just is going to be chafing at it, and eventually he's gonna have to just go.
Very good.
He's not going to be able to stop himself.
I hear. And I hear. I wonder if he purposely made the conditions a little bit convoluted, where Shimei will find some rationalization to enable himself to leave. I'm just going for a moment, and I'm not even going in the direction he told me. That's maybe also Shlomo's trying to make it a little bit harder for Shimei to abide by the rules. Interesting. Yeah, but this is certainly the wisdom of Shlomo at play, and we're going to see more of that in chapter 3. And now we have the conclusion of this chapter, because really now all the accounts have been settled. Adoniyahu, dead. The one who rebelled is dead. Yoav, his supporter, gone. Shimi, the opposition who cursed and hated David and all his descendants, he's now also put to death. So that leads us to verse number 45. Melech Shlomo Baruch. The king Shlomo was blessed. The Chised David yeh nachon lifnei Hashem ad olam. And the throne of David will be, oh, this is still Shlomo speaking, excuse me, will be established eternally. By Shlomo saying, by you dying, it's going to wipe out all the enemies, and now I can have a calm rule over the people without any dissent. So 46, as he finishes it off, Benyahu is again the executioner, or at least he's the one in charge of overseeing the execution. And indeed, the kingship was established in the hands of Shlomo. So now next time, we're going to see now Shlomo on his throne, all settled, all fixed, and he's going to start looking outwards. He has now settled internally within the Jewish people. There's no more dissent, no rebellious subjects, no people who think they're going to be king, none of that anymore. So now chapter 3 and on is going to be him expanding outwards. He's going to start marrying, the king's daughter, King Paro's daughter, and so on and so forth. You see him judging and all that stuff. We'll get to that, God willing, next week. Okay. Have a great night. And goodbye to you all. And the best of goodbyes, as we say. Anteka? Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.